part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane,
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Worldwide, and you're listening to the Krypton Report.
June is fast approaching, and that is not only Superman Day, but it's also the 10th anniversary of Man of Steel. Check out our website on Facebook for the information to join, as we will be updating our live Man of Steel rewatch. We'll be streaming, and we will be making an online party to rewatch Man of Steel. So please add that to your calendar. And remember,
look up in the sky!
Welcome to the Krypton Report. I'm your host, Tyler, and with me today is James, and we have a special recording that we did with Cress Williams, Mr. Black Lightning himself. So here is the interview that we did with Cress, and tune in and enjoy. Thank you.
My son wanted to say hello, and I told my wife I would let him know when you joined us so he could come and say hi. He's coming. I sent her a message to send him in to say hi.
How is he? I mean, how old is he?
He's 8.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. And so he's like, oh, cool. Like, he's excited. And so.
No, I have a 7-year-old boy, too. So
I have a 6-year-old girl and an 8-year-old son.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so, no, I have a 7-year-old, and my youngest is daughter. She's going to be 5 this week. But then I also have an 18-year-old who's graduating high school next week.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Our house
That's a big one. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Our house is a little wild and wacky.
Hi, guys.
Hey, what's up?
Be louder,
buddy.
How
you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm playing Sorry with my sister, so that's what I'm doing.
The board game, Sorry?
Yeah.
Nice. Are you winning?
So far, yes.
Sweet. We'll stick it to her. That's cool.
It is cool.
Happy. So, what's your name? Tell me your name. I didn't.
My name is Solomon.
Nice name, Solomon. That's a very powerful name.
I know.
Yeah, it's probably some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
He's got wisdom. I'll tell you that for a little man.
Yeah, awesome. Well, happy Sunday, Solomon.
Good. Sounds good.
All right. You want to go play with Sayla?
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
All right,
Wait, what?
Good to see you, Sola.
My daughter's name is Sayla.
Spell it.
Selah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it means to pause and like kind of like it's like another form of amen.
I know exactly because my soon-to-be 5-year-old, that's her name.
For real?
Yeah, Sayla.
Yes.
That is awesome.
Sayla June Williams. Yes.
Do you spell it the same way?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said spell it. It's the exact same way, and we've got it from the exact same reference.
Awesome. See, that's like my wife's right here. His daughter is about to turn 5. Guess what her name is? Sayla.
No way.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
So just getting acquainted here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
right.
my son's, and it's so funny, Solomon. My son's name is Josiah.
That was a number that was one of those names that I always loved, and I thought about it, and I told my wife, like, if we do name our kid Josiah, I was like, we're gonna call him Saya as a short name.
It's funny because we when we thought about his name, because like having a name Cress, which is a cool name, like I've never met anybody who's ever had it, but it's so short that it doesn't lend itself to any type of nickname. So
yeah.
So in picking like kids' names, like when I met my wife and when we like started dating, even when we were friends before we started dating, she had said that if she ever had a girl, she wanted to name her Sayla, and I was like, that's amazing. Yes, let's have that. So we knew that like before we even started dating. But
that's that's awesome that held so long.
Yes. Yeah.
She stuck to that for years.
Well, I thought it was amazing. I just thought like, man, that's a beautiful name. I've never heard it before. In the biblical reference, it's just, but we don't really do anything with that. We just call her like Sayla. But with Josiah, like I was like, we have he's like, oh, you have Joe, we have, you have Josiah, and we didn't even realize, like, when he was in preschool, like, we went to school one day picking him up, and all his friends were calling him Saya. They were like, Saya, Saya. We're like, oh. But then the weirdest thing is just like it is, like, we call him, and it's just because I don't know, it just stuck when he was a baby. Like, every once in a while we'll call him Joe, but I usually call him Bubba or Bubs.
Nice.
It's like you can't account for like this random nickname.
It's like so Solomon's name, like I broke it down. His nickname is just Solo.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, my wife is a singer. She's always sung. It's been big in her family.
Okay.
And everything. So she sang a lot of solos.
Yeah.
I'm a bass player and everything. So it's kind of like, but then it was also like it's like Han Solo.
Yeah.
So call him Captain Solo or whatever. And then because of Solo, sometimes I nickname him, I'll call him Soul Man. Like that's a superhero name. I'll be like, come on, Soul Man, and he'll be like,
oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's wild. I can't wait to tell my wife because it's like
I know. Like she was still standing here because she came out. I was like, I gotta tell her. I'm like, she's right here. I'm like, I gotta tell her because it's one of those like that was a name that she brought out.
Yeah.
And we were both just kind of like, all right, because when we went through a lot of trouble to get the kids into the world, and with Solomon, part of the meeting was peace.
Yeah.
And everything. So we're like, and he really recommends that. And it really brought her and I peace from all the tragedy that we had gone through to get him in here to the world.
Yeah.
And then Selah was just kind of that. She just texted me and says my daughter Selah is really excited about her name. So that
is awesome.
But how have you been, sir, since last time we chatted? What's going on? Any new projects coming up? Like,
I've been really good, pretty good. I mean, I'm sure you guys know that, there's a strike going on. And so.
Yes, sir. I actually saw your post. I had that in my notes where you were out there picketing and everything for it.
Yeah. It was the first time. It was interesting. It's just a wild and wacky time. I was in the business back in 2007 when there was a writer's strike back in the 80s. Probably before any of us knew of that, but I was like in the business as an adult in 2007 when the other one happened, and I don't, honestly at that time I wasn't even fully aware. I knew it was kind of like about DVD things, but I wasn't fully aware what was going on, and the general sentiment was kind of like, yeah, they're doing that thing, and we're trying to keep going. I think everybody was kind of generally thinking this is a bit disruptive and all that. But this time around, there's such a solidarity because we're kind of all in the same boat, and it's just more and more challenging to make a living. It's the way the world goes. Like the middle class in the world and in our world is getting kind of squeezed out. And so in Hollywood, the middle class actor, which I consider myself a middle class actor, and a middle class actor is getting squeezed out. Middle class writers, it's like, that top 5% are great, but and then everything below that is challenging. And so this time around, there's such union solidarity for the writers and us actors, anticipating in a matter of weeks we'll be doing the same thing. And my wife's an actress as well, and so when the strike started, we were like, yeah, we want to get on the picket line. But it was right when it started, we're like, let's not rush out there now because they have all the energy in the world and all the people in the world, and let's kind of wait and give it like a month or so when people start getting tired, and we can come in and be fresh blood and that fresh. But so we had actually anticipated waiting, but a friend of mine, Lamont McGee, who was a writer on Black Lightning, he messaged me, and they have these themed days for striking. I think it's just to kind of keep it fresh. And so he messaged me that Wednesday. This past Wednesday was Superhero Day at one.
Nice.
And so I was like, I think I should go out. I think this is the day to go.
Yeah.
So
sure.
And so we went out. I've never been on a picket line before, and we went out, and it felt really good because you just feel like, okay, I'm not alone in this. And then it was also just you see so many people, that you actors, and because there's a lot of actors out there, so I see seeing actors and writers that you know like grew up with, but then seeing actors and writers that you worked with and hadn't seen in forever, so it's a bit of reminiscing and all the while, you know, supporting. So we my oldest daughter showed us how we could figure out how many steps we had taken on our phone, and we realized we had done like 15,000 steps that day.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like, what? I looked it up because we were tired, man. I did it, and then we came home, and as soon as like I sat down, I was like, I could go to sleep right now. Why am I so tired?
It all caught up with you.
Totally, about
Right.
7 miles of walking, but and we'll get out there again, you know. But I mean, overall, we're doing well. I'm just trying to enjoy the free time. To be able to be dad 100% and be husband 100%. And my buddy Nate Scoggins, who we did a movie together called What Remains, which is out and about. And so
we're going to talk about that because both him and I have watched it, and last time we chatted, we didn't get to talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be kind of a big focal point of the conversations. Because
awesome. We'll talk about that. So anyway, we not to give away with that, but we started working on through just these wonderful. The movie kind of started our first bit of working relationship. We actually been friends for a long time, and we got even kind of in a weird way. We got closer when I was doing Black Lightning, and then he brought me a project that he had been working on and kind of reworking. A pilot called Who by Fire, which is kind of all about the prison camps, and there's a show out now called Fire Country, which is it's not like our show, but set in the same world of, you know, prison camps where inmates also learn to fight fires to get time off their sentence or whatever. So even before that show ever came out, he brought this idea to me, and I loved it, and we started working on it. We were working on it when I was still in Atlanta. We were like developing it, and so we got that to a place where we were happy with it. And then there was a project that I had tried to write back in the early 2000s called Take 5, which is about 4 guys in Los Angeles becoming friends, and kind of loosely based on a period of time in my life. And my wife is the one who reminded me of it, and I kind of dusted it off and read it and realized I needed some big help with it, and he came on and helped me, and we've kind of redeveloped it and got it to a place that we're really happy with it. So we're hoping that we have a couple of things that we can get going once all of this stuff settles, you know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I would like to talk about What Remains.
Yeah.
I watched the movie and I thought about it afterwards, and I came to the conclusion one of the things I really liked about the movie is it felt like it's a movie that makes you ask, if you claim a belief, and you preach it and you talk about it, how much are you willing to go for that belief? And you know, I thought about that because, you know, a little bit of my history is I went to Bible college.
Okay.
And so like I grew up in the church. I don't have ill will towards religion or anything, but I've met a lot of people who claim something in their belief system, but don't ever act it out.
They're not. It's not living. You're not seeing.
You know, they're not authentic. They're not living it. It's something that we've always wrestled to between me and my wife about the people we interact with in church and stuff. And I've met some really great church people, and I've met some people who give those people bad names. And you know, so what I appreciate about in your film was it felt like this is a man who claims something.
Yeah.
He preaches it to his congregation because you play the pastor role.
Yeah.
And it's testing, do I really believe what I say or not? So that was one of the things I really appreciate about that movie.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I you know, it's funny because Nathan, it was well, like a full disclaimer, I am a follower of Christ myself, and that's the one thing that threw me off today because it's Sunday and like we have this routine. We go to church, and then it's kind of a loosey goosey day. I go off and I go grocery shopping for the family, and my wife does the baths for the little ones, and so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait a minute, I got something to do. My brain just went like it was just But I definitely have, experienced people who, in a sense, check the box, but you don't see it in their lives. I have friends who are, who aren't believers who have experienced those types of Christians, and then unfortunately will then attribute that to God, and then say, that's what Christianity is, and at times I can be like, no, that's not. It's unfortunately it can get messy because as my pastor would say, people be people. And and so unfortunately any system we have gets corrupted by people because we're a mess. We're flawed and we're broken, and so broken things happen. But what I love about the film as well is that it's messy, that it's not crisp and clean, and it's uncomfortable. And even the ending is uncomfortable. Because
I was going to talk about that.
Yeah. So that's one thing that it was weird. It drew me when I read it. It's because like Nathan, who was a friend of mine, and we actually met at church. We have known each other for quite a few years at church, but we never really hung out. We were just, people that we saw at church and say, hey, and all that. And at the church I used to be at before we moved to Atlanta and then moved back, we were at this church, and I used to teach acting for them on Saturdays. And when I got Black Lightning and, we were going to move the whole family to Atlanta, he came up to me one Sunday and was like, hey, we didn't even have each other's email. He's like, hey, let's exchange emails. And he's like, I'd love to pray for you. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we exchanged emails, and, him in LA and me in Atlanta. And to his credit, it like every Sunday he'd send me an email, and be like, hey, just checking in, da, da, da. And I'm praying for you about this, this, and that. And, a couple days later I'd get back to him, and in the email, we're sharing each other's lives. So he's sharing what's going on with his life, and I'm sharing what's going on with mine. So I'm praying for him. We're praying. And it was probably this weird thing of being, thousands of miles from each other. It was the most consistent interaction we had. We had it for, month. We had it the whole time I was there. So we had it for like 4 years. But at one point, probably about a year in, he said, hey, would love some prayer. I just finished a script. And I'm like, yeah, no, totally. I'll do that. And then I was just kind of like, hey, can I read it? Just like, and he's like, yeah. So he sent me the script, and I read it. And when I read it, so to his credit, there's no ethnicity written into the script at all. And so I was just reading the script, and my own social programming, like when I read the script, I responded to the character of the pastor. I was just like, and honestly, I was just like, I feel like I'm supposed to play this character. But without any ethnicities written into the script, I just assumed he wanted somebody of color to play the convict. And so I was like, he's not going to have, he's not going to have a black convict and a black pastor. He's not going to do that. That just becomes a black movie. So, and then also he's my friend. I didn't want to put him on the spot. He never said, hey, read it. I want you to, be in it. So I read it, and I was just kind of like, hey, great, really great script, da, da, da. And I think at one point I said, oh, who are you thinking about for the son? And he's like, oh, it depends on who I cast as the as the father. And I didn't want to put him on the spot. So we kind of did this dance around each other until finally I just said, hey, I don't want to, you do what you want. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I really feel like I feel called to play this role. And then he finally said, actually, you're the only person I could think of that play that role.
Nice.
That's great.
It definitely, like, you see movies, and you feel like this person's connecting, but then there's times where you feel it and you're like, I feel like this person's connecting deeper. Like there's just a sense you get in their performance. And
yeah,
that was gonna be one of my questions. Like, did you like have a connection? But obviously you did. With the character.
Yeah. I mean, going back like to him, to your and his interaction, I mean, that's like great to hear about, like genuine practice, genuine people.
Yeah.
talking with each other and wishing the best for each other. I love to hear that, because it's all too often that's not the case.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, seeing it play out in life. Exactly.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you know, the connection, your performance in the film is amazing. It's fantastic.
Oh man.
You can see the conflict. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The conflict from the very beginning of you talking to the funeral, about what happened, and then the entire film, your work with Kellen at the time, it was really great to see that. And I think with your idea of it being a person of color as the convict, I think that would have drastically changed what the movie was, or how the person would have been treated.
Yes.
And I think it was so well, because he wasn't treated well coming back to the town.
No.
You know what I mean? But it would have been, I think the focus would have been so much worse if it was the other way around, unfortunately, you know?
Totally. Yeah, totally. I mean, and yeah, I mean, it definitely, I just felt like, and I think roles like that, you know, I'm a father, and so that was one of the things I could connect with. Like, I remember when I read the script, and it was wonderful to read a script without any attachment, to just almost read it like a book, with, you know, because sometimes reading something, when somebody says, read this, and I'd like you to do this role, then your reading of it is kind of skewed already. And so when I read it for him the first time, I was just reading it to give him some, you know, advice, or just kind of support my friend. And I just immediately stepped in and identified with the father's role, and I felt that the conflict as I was reading it, where, you know, he makes this decision for his son, and even though it's not an easy decision, like, I remember just feeling like, no, that's the decision I would make. It's not it's not easy, but it seemed very clear to me, which is, it was a good thing I was playing the role, that it was like, that's a decision I would make. Because I had talked to other people, Anne Hayes was one of them, who was telling Nathan that my character was ridiculous, like that he shouldn't play. And I was like, because from her perspective, it was like, you can't do that. It's an absolute mistake. But I was like, that's fine. She can
Like,
feel that way.
Right, like you're letting a murderer walk, kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what that interaction with your son at that point. I love that when you like, he's convinced that this guy's a murderer, and he didn't, you know, he should still be in prison. He deserves what he got.
Yeah.
But you there, like, you're letting your son walk away after what he did, fully knowing, and it's like, I still have to believe that even a murderer is capable of that redemption.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you know, the movie, it is all about forgiveness, and it's all about those things, kind of those principles that, and I don't think Christianity is unique to it. You know, that life, we have these principles that we have in our head, or even in our hearts, but then what happens when the rubber meets the road and you have to live that out? You know, forgiveness from a distance is fine, you know. And I think even, you know, the character decided he was going to forgive Kellen's character, and push that he, you know, get a light sentence, because
who he may never see again.
Exactly. It's like, this is what my wife would have wanted, and it's easy to do it because I'll never see him again, and I've done it. But then now, when you're like confronted with it, you know, day in and day out, like, okay, can you live that out? And then there are consequences to living that out. And so I think it's a really human story, and I love that it just wasn't left in a nice, neat bow. It's not necessarily a happy ending. That was one of the things that kind of drew me to go on. This is a film that I feel like people would walk out and continue a conversation.
Yeah.
Because
like you said, like, as you have your role as a human, you know, you have your role as a father, and you have your role as a pastor, and which means you're like a leader of a community. And like you said in the film, like, your role is to give people hope.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you walk that and how do you lead that? And then the same thing is, as fathers, like James and I both are, I would totally, you do anything to protect your child.
Yeah.
And it's in that same vein that you showed of like forgiveness and second chances. Just the difference is now you're going on another step of protection.
Exactly. And even from, and honestly, from a nuts and bolts logical standpoint, when I look at it from like point, from the beginning to end, it was like, well, this was my fault. Because, if I did what my son wanted, if I didn't bring this guy in and give him a job and bring him into our lives, then my son would have never even been in that position to even do what he did. So I was all like, this was my fault. So that's the way I looked at it. It was like, of course I got to take the fall. Of course this is, it was weird, man, because you've seen the film. It was like there's not a lot of nice, fun things in there. So when we went to do it, and we were in Amarillo, Texas. It was like just putting my head down and living in a very kind of dark, depressing place for I don't know how many weeks we shot. It was like this. Okay, this is what I'm about to do, and there's not going to be a lot of fun. Except for like, those weekends when I have a couple of days off and I can kind of at least take a day to not think about this anymore. But then it's like right back in there again.
I would say what's interesting is I'm watching the film.
Yeah.
My son's kind of moving around and then he sits down with me. And the part where he sits down and is talking, like, he's like, what you watching? And I tell him about it. And it's at the scene that I think is so brilliant is when the father walks in and basically lies to his son where he's at. And the camera splits.
Yes. Okay.
And you get the two shots.
Yes.
The one representing what the father actually does.
Yeah.
And the one representing what he should do.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there with Solomon and we're watching it. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, okay, I get what's going on. And then he asks me and I stop it and I tell him and explain like, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And that led to a conversation between me and him about the importance of him and I always being able to talk.
Yeah.
And like, not just father and son, but like communicate with my children and my wife and everything. And then what's funny is later that evening, he walks and he goes, Dad, I need to talk to you. And he's like, you said you'd always talk to me. And he had some stuff going on at school with like some friends who were kind of flipping the script or kind of being bullyish and kind of, he's got that with, what's really a friend. He's going through that, he's in second grade. And, but it was just, that was what I feel like another part of this movie that shows the importance of communication.
Yeah.
Of not hiding things. Because if, your character had been more open to his son and sat down and had that conversation at the table, that would have been like the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Or like it would have been, but no. And as the movie went on, I wondered if we would see like a dual ending or something where like if we would went back to that scene or something and kind of
that's interesting.
What would have happened, like almost like more parallel scenes,
Yeah.
But I found it just really emphasized the importance of communication.
Yeah.
And, bringing your son to the same part where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. That was first of all, I'm just getting chills. That's what you described. It's like, that's, one of the many reasons we do this. I mean, that the fact that you could be sitting there watching it and sit there with your son, and it opens the door to communication. That's something that affects your life and affects your relationship. That's a beautiful part about art. And yeah, those doing that split screen, but then watching it, because I watched it later, it is so hard because it's just like, oh, if you just open your mouth, if you just step in that moment, this whole thing goes a whole different direction, and good things come of it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was watching it and I really liked the juxtaposition of what happened, and then I was like, well, is this going to be the start of, like you said, more parallels as to like what could have happened or what might turn it around and bring it back? But then when it kind of did the and faded out and went to black, I was like, oh no. I was like, I don't think that's what happened. And then and then it came back around. I was like, oh, that's That's sad.
fortunately, as parents, we have those moments. Like I think it's been very, very important. I don't know if it was ever like really mirrored for me as a child, but like the ability of when I'm wrong to go to my, my child and say, I'm sorry, my fault. Like I was wrong. Like, because I think especially older generations had this kind of wanted to create this infallible facade. So they could never apologize to their child when they did something wrong or missed the boat or whatever. But you can see the effect on a child's face when you can do that. When you can come up to them and say, "It's my fault."
I've that's something that I've done with my kids, like, and tried to be like, look, I'm doing the best that I can, and sometimes Daddy messes up too, and apologizing for them and stuff. So
my kids, I have 3 kids, 14, 13, and 1.
Oh my God! You're in it. Oh my! You're 14 and 13. I'm sorry. I feel for you.
So actually, that communication and that vulnerability, being able to talk to me, it's like they're hiding in their room. It's like you can talk. You can talk to me.
It gets better. It gets better.
They're dealing with some tough things too with family and my ex, their mother. So it's a rough go here and there, touch and go from time to time. So they're dealing with a lot. So definitely having to speak with them, trying to open up to me, show them that I'm vulnerable and apologize, as well as, anything that's bothering them, they can talk to me.
Yeah, no, my 18-year-old is from my first marriage, and I was blessed to have started out with like exactly split custody, and then very quickly after that moved to full custody. So she's been with me my whole life. But when you hit, I think and I'll find out with my other little ones, but when you hit middle school age, it gets rough. And I think it was exasperated and more rough because of the whole blended family thing. But now on the other side of it, it was really right around when she turned 17 that it started to get a lot better. And
well, that's good. That's something to look forward to. I've got a blended family. My girlfriend has 5 kids, her 5th being my youngest. So together we actually have 7 children.
Wow.
So it's
your house is never quiet.
Mm-hmm. It's actually interesting because my little one, my 1-year-old, she's her name is Allura. Named after Supergirl's mom.
Nice.
So my kids go to their mother's house for a time. Her kids go to their father's house for a time. So she's got this block almost every week where she gets this single child experience, this only child experience, but then she has so many brothers and sisters.
Right. They do. Like, honestly, they do. I heard it, and then now I'm living it where I'm like, oh, at some point they come back. Like at some point, 17 or 18, they start to come back. I think they start to realize adulthood is coming, and they start to realize that what they're experiencing with you is not always going to be there. So I think they start to come back and start to slowly appreciate all the things you have been doing and are doing, and they also are afraid of real life, because real life starts coming at them, and they're like, oh man.
I don't know if that ever stops being scary sometimes.
No. It's amazing. Like with my oldest, it's amazing seeing her. I kind of want to be an adult, but then confronted with some adult things, going, "Oh, I don't want to be an adult," And it's I don't know. It's a journey.
It is, and I will take it as it comes. I wanted to ask at the end of the movie, and then we'll talk about some other things. But in the script, was it always like? Usually I can figure out clues and everything in movies, but I feel like the movie ended very ambiguously. Yes. Was it like that in the script? Like, you don't have to spoil anything, but I'm just wondering, was it written, like, when you read it, like, how did you feel with how the movie ended?
It was 100% ambiguous. I would even say, without ruining it, I think on the page, it was even more ambiguous. Like,
Ooh.
yeah, like, and I don't know. It's hard for me to look at it the way everybody else looks at it, because I think it's something just very minor. It's not giving it away, but I think something just very minor on the page. At least the way I read it, it seems like that he's just sitting in the car, like just there,
Mm-hmm.
and then it ends. Whereas I think in the way the movie, him pulling up, makes it a little less ambiguous, but it was the intention was for it always to be ambiguous, and just basically the ending to be in the eye of the beholder. Because even Nathan won't tell me what he thinks the ending is. Yeah, wrote it. He wrote it and directed it. He's like, he won't tell me. Like, I told him, because I'm like, no, this is what I think happened, and this is what I think, how the movie continues on. Because I have no problem sharing that. That's just what my character's doing, and what I think. But he was like, he hasn't really shared it. So I think it was always the intention to be ambiguous, which is also what I loved about it. When I read it, I was like, it films that don't give you the answer, and where people can go out and have a discussion, and somebody goes, I think it's this, and I think it's that, and that's good art.
Yeah. Yeah, the way it ends, I mean, the way it ends, I mean, how it does what happens and then it cuts to black.
Yeah.
It could honestly be he either popped it in park or he dropped it in drive. So he either stayed or he left.
Yeah.
And it's right there. It's right there in it, and it's like, that's it.
Exactly.
And
I think when I read it on the page, it was like he had already, like, basically the car was off, and that you feel that he's just been sitting there, and the car's not even on. So and then it fades to black. That's the way I when you read it, how it came across, which I think feels even more ambiguous, as opposed, if the car's still running, I think it might, people might go one way or the other. But at the same time, it's still like, oh, like you said, pop it in park, or pop it in drive. So I love that.
What I love is, like, back to what we said earlier, I think the film in itself is a conversation about choice and consequences, and what you, like you said, what you think it ended. What would you do? What would you do as each character? What would you do as a father?
Yeah. And the theme of forgiveness. I mean, could you do what you do?
Yes.
And forgive him and help him, or would you go as far as what other people say, like the sheriff says, and what other people say, but what your son says is, or would you go that route where you couldn't forgive him?
Yeah. There was one point
and
in the
have
film
to take revenge.
Yeah.
Where the journal is discovered by the son, that I wondered if the son was going to try to give the sheriff the journal to say it was like a premeditated thing, and he was going to try. That was a read that I had for a little while. That he was going to try to flip it back around, that he did it himself, But
yeah. Well, and it was one thing too that was, I mean, kind of going back, speaking to the script and from page to actually doing it. And so, like I said, Nathan wrote a script with no ethnicity, and so in the scene when the son comes to me and shows me what he did, and we're out in front of the car and we're talking through it, there's a line where the whole scene where he's like, I'll get the same treatment he did, and it's like, no, you won't. And because of, like, we added the line in the moment as we were just kind of improvising, I added the line, like, you're a black man in Texas, you're not gonna, basically, and it rang true in that moment, and we did it, and we just kept doing it that way. And then I remember at one point, when we were done and we're back home, and Nathan was editing it, and he was like, hey, and he called me up, and he was like, he's like, people, some people, he's like, are pushing for me to get rid of that line. And he's like, so, what do you think? And I was just like, hey man, it's your movie, because like I kind of signed on for this, on this job. I signed on to be the actor. I wasn't the things that we're working on now. I'm an actor, producer, creator. Like they're like our babies. But this one, I was like, no, I signed on to be the actor to help you, create your story. But I said, but it's my opinion is you should keep it in there because it's just the reality of the moment. We don't hit the audience over the head with it, but it's just that's real. And there are going to be some people of color in the audience who are going to watch that, and by hearing me say that, it will give the rest of the movie credibility. And he listened to me, and to his credit, he stuck to his guns and kept it in there. And I just thought that was awesome.
Yeah, in that moment, that line, like when you delivered it, it rang true, but it's nothing. It's not what I held on to.
No,
that's not. Yeah, it's not what I held on to in that line. In that exchange, it was it was premeditated murder.
Right.
It was premeditated murder. I mean, that is honestly the biggest part of what happened. Premeditated murder, and then the reality of everything else setting in. That was what I had taken from it. So
exactly. Well,
I think it hit perfect.
Yeah, because I just feel like it was part of the conversation. Because I made a point too. I think taking the moment in that scene where I ask him like, was it an accident? Like I made sure to hit that hard. I think I even repeated it because to also like I think to highlight the difference that like if he could say no, it was an accident, it was self-defense. Okay, now we can go down a different road. We can talk about some other things. And I think I even said it like almost in a pleading way, like please tell me it was an accident, because if it was, it's something totally different. Which I think I even added that or kind of highlighted it even more than it was in the script because of that purpose.
It was a very well done scene of just the layers of your stress, your trying to figure out what to do, but also like where to go from here. Yeah. And you want to yell at your kid, but you're at the same time like know that they're in a state of panic as well.
Yeah.
So you're managing all this emotion, and it's very, very well and believably executed scene.
Oh, thank you. I'm gonna be honest with you. That scene was scary for me. It was not scary, but it was a scene that I walked away that night really unsure of. Like when you're filming at times, there are times when I'm doing a scene on any project that I internally just know it's working. Like I'm like, oh, I love it. I could do this scene all these different ways, and I just feel like it's clicking. So that when it's time to move on, they're like, are you happy? I'm like, yes, totally happy. Let's go. There was I think the scene with Kellen and I, after we go through a day of work out on the farm, and we have this scene by the truck. I'm sitting on the bed of the truck around sunset and talking to him about my wife and all that. That was one of those scenes where I was like, okay, I know this is working. But the scene that night of my son coming and showing me the car and showing me what he did, I wasn't sure, to be perfectly honest. We did all these different takes, and I had to just kind of go to Nathan, and he's like, and I'm like, are you happy? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, because I can't tell. I'm going to be honest with you, I can't tell. So I'm just going to trust you because you're the one looking at it, that you've got everything you wanted and you're happy. And that's kind of like that leaning partnership you have to have with your director at times, where you're like, I can't see it. I'm in the fishbowl, as my old acting teacher says. As an actor, when you're in a fishbowl, you got a distorted view of what's happening, and so you have to trust people outside the fishbowl to go, no, it's everything's there. We're good. We can move on. So afterwards, when I saw it, I'm like, okay, because there's so many things going on, right? It's just there's so many emotions, and so as an actor, I'm trying to make sure I'm hitting every single one, and that it feels authentic. And it was just
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and you don't know what's being seen. You don't know what's going to be covered up or taken away in post, like
Exactly. Yeah.
that type of stuff. So, I mean, that's got to be hard sometimes thinking on it afterwards.
Yeah. And imagining, we're just imagining, because like it's what I love about the film too, that it's not very graphic. So, you know, people can watch it. It's not you know, I mean, the acts or the knowledge of the acts are violent, but it's not a gory movie. It's not a, you know, it's done in a way that it's more let your imagination go. So, you know, even that scene when he comes and opens the car door, we're not looking at anything.
Right.
We're having, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's very tastefully shot.
Yeah, and so we
Absolutely.
have to imagine all of it there. Kellen wasn't there that day, you know, sitting in the car. You know, we just had to imagine it and put it in our heads and go and run
Well,
with it.
I mean, I know you're a big guy. You know, you're tall, but I mean, so is Kellen. I think that'd be pretty hard for you to get that guy up and get him into the truck and everything.
Well,
I mean, he's a pretty big dude.
Yeah, I mean, that night when we did the whole thing, that, you know, me transferring him over and setting fire to the truck, he was there that night, and yeah, we had to tweak how to do it because it's written.
I was gonna say, did you get him? Like, was that him?
A little bit. I mean, we had to tweak it because I was like, I can't do this. I can't. like my knees don't work like they used to.
That was one of the things I pulled myself out of the movie. Was like, I'm gonna have to ask him.
Yeah, no, we tweaked. You know, we tweaked it. He helped me out a little bit, and he, to his credit, he he helped me out, and we just had to kind of like, oh, we'll cut from here to there, and to make it look right, because it's like, yeah, I'm not that young anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, your performance and the choice that's made in the movie, you know, all the time that you give to Troy's character, and then actually talking to him about not about losing that relationship with your son, and then in the end doing what you do as a choice for him.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, even when you lose them, that you have that distance. I mean, couldn't imagine having my mother killed like that, you know, and seeing that person, especially seeing that person working side by side with my dad.
Exactly.
Like that would be, so just like to put yourself in those shoes. But, yeah, your performance pulling that off at the end, you know, just doing anything for him.
Yeah.
I felt that it was great.
You know, it's a challenging thing, and sometimes it's just that wonderful thing where a writer can write something, and then, you know, Nathan writing the script, but then he put things in there, and I think they were kind of unconsciously, like he was just led to put certain things in there that then I, as the actor, could fill in the blanks, because there was a tough, and I didn't want it to feel the transitions, like you know, the moment when Kellen's character comes, when I'm trying to take trash cans out, and I end up basically offering him a job. Like, that's a hard, like, the script can say this, you start here, you go here, you do this, but to make it make sense for me was hard. Like, I'm like, how does this not turn into a Hallmark movie? You know what I mean? And so, but one of the things that was interesting is the way Nathan wrote it, and it was the wife, the deceased wife, was almost a character in the movie, even though she wasn't there. And some of the things that my character has said about her created who this person was. And so for me, those hard turns of how do I forgive this guy? How do I give this guy a job? How do I, the way I could justify it is like, it was almost as if my wife was on my shoulder and I could hear her saying, do this.
I was going to say, like you're Leonidas from 300 and you look back at your wife and she gives you the nod.
Yeah. That was for me, the driving force of doing all those things, was that it was her going, do this. And there were times when my character's in the office, and we had a picture of her up there, on the desk, and I could look at her, and like, you know, the internal dialogue for me was just like, I hope this is what you wanted. I think this is what you wanted. Because otherwise it just kind of act those things out. It just felt too perfect, too,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
liked you genuinely asking her in the movie, you
Yeah,
know, hopefully this is what you would want.
yeah,
I enjoyed that.
yeah,
Is very, yeah, the whole movie was very even though it's the themes and everything is very difficult, it's very dark. The
yeah.
movie was still very um, heartwarming, or at least touching.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, we're going to turn it around a little bit
Yeah.
because we're running low on time. I want to say, looking at my notes here, Black Lightning ended in 2021.
Yeah.
Have you been doing any of the conventions, like going and doing any like that type stuff?
I haven't. I honestly, what was it? I think it was during a hiatus of our first season. We had finished our first. Oh no, maybe it was our second. It might have been our second. Oh no, maybe it was our first. And I had never done conventions. You know, like when I got the job, I did San Diego Comic-Con the first time, which, you know, for people who don't know, when you think about San Diego Comic-Con, it's different than conventions all over the place. Like Comic-Con is really a giant press junket. It's just everybody publicizing, you know, getting the word out about their things. So in that hiatus, I signed up and did a bunch of conventions. I'd never done them before, and my daughter, actually, my wife was pregnant with Selah, and I booked all these conventions, and at the I think one of the last ones I did, I was like, I hope she doesn't come early because otherwise I'm gonna have to hop on a plane and get back. And you know, she waited and all that. But I had done so many of them in such a short period of time that I got really exhausted. And then you know, and then kind of in a blink of an eye, COVID hit, and that shut everything down. And then we've been back and at home, and I just haven't, you know, gotten up to do them again. I think COVID still kind of scares me a little bit because you're interacting with people like all day long, and you know, like just close, touching people, shaking hands. I don't know how to do things from a distance, like in like if I'm going to be somewhere, I want to really connect with a person, and I don't know how to do it halfway. So I haven't really done any other ones in a while, but yeah, I did them early on.
That's cool. I mean, you know, it's one of those things you see certain actors like go through phases, like just recently with the Flash ending, I see that Grant Gustin just started doing conventions. Like he hadn't done any.
Yeah.
And like he was close. Like 2 weeks ago, he joined Indiana, which is, you know, we're in Ohio, so it was like he joined on Indiana. I was like, oh man, that would have been cool. Okay. So I just wonder, like, if that's something that you've thought about getting back out there or doing or anything.
I might, you know, I might do it. The other thing that's challenging is that it's like everything's taken me away from home, and like the age of my kids, it's like, you know, I also want to be that guy. I don't want to be that dad, I guess.
Oh, I understand that.
You know,
I took a 5 a.m. flight. That means I got to the airport at 3 from San Francisco to get back here by I think I landed back here like at 2 or 3 to go see my kids play because it was the last night it was open, and it was only a half an hour play, but they had been working out for so long. And you know, I landed and I had like no sleep. I got back, I went to that play. They were excited. Came home and just crashed.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like so I feel like I don't want to be that dad. Like if they got something going on, like I want to be there for it no matter what it is.
Yeah, I don't want to be. You know, I don't want my kids to get used to me not being around. And so I've, you know, that's when I booked Black Lightning, that was the thing why I was like, hey, if I'm doing this, we're all moving because I'm not going to be this person you only see on a screen. And we did that, and then we came back home and I said, okay, I kind of, at least for a period of time, I'm trying to focus on exclusively working in California because I'm like, I don't I don't. I can't pack them up and move them all the time because that's not fair. They got especially they're in school and they got friends and they got a life, and I don't want to be the absentee dad. So I look at something like speaking of Black Lightning, like James Remar.
Great actor.
Yes, yeah, and he's an empty nester, and so I was like, you know what? When I'm his age, my kids will be grown, and that's when I can just traipse all over the world. My wife and I, we talk about, someday we'll just traipse all over the world doing this, doing that, and having a great
That's
time.
cool.
So
now with Black Lightning, I have to ask. I meant to ask you last time. Which suit did you like wearing better?
That's awesome. I definitely liked the second suit better, the newer suit.
A lot more comfortable.
A lot more comfortable. Oh my God, that first suit was excruciating. It was so heavy. It was so bulky. And it's funny because Laura Jean, LJ, as we call her, she's the one who designed and supervised the suits being made. And she refers to me, she's like, you are a guinea pig. You are a first, because she did Black Lightning, but then after that, like, she went on to do, she did all the suits for Titans.
Oh, cool. I can kind of see that now.
Yeah, she did all the suits for The Boys.
Oh, nice.
And I'm sure she's doing more and more suits, but she's like, Black Lightning was the first, and so I was the guinea pig in all these things and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and what and so going from the first suit to the second suit, a lot of bugs have been worked out, and it was much easier to wear and move and fight. And we're late to the game. My wife and I, we just started watching Titans. We're like in the kind of the middle of season 2 right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
How are you enjoying that? Because it's got its fans and its detractors.
It's an up and down. Like, it feels. I don't want to talk bad about my show, but it feels at times unbalanced.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it boils down to it's whatever anybody's asking for, right? So when I started watching the first season, and I didn't know if I was going to like it. So I started watching a few episodes, and I found myself really liking it. So I told my wife about it. I'm like, hey, and then I said, hey, you know what? If you're into it, and she's like, no, I want to watch it. I'm like, cool. And so I went back to watch the first season with her, and then we continued on that way. And because I have some friends who said, oh, it takes a while to get going. And almost like they were kind of poo-pooing the first season, and they liked it more as it went on. And I had some friends who really liked the first season and said, "Oh, I don't know about everything after." But I think it depends on what you want. I personally, I still got quite a bit to go, but I really liked the first season because the pacing, that it wasn't like blink, 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 and now they're a team, and now we're just fighting crime.
Yeah.
That I liked how they took their time with it all, and that I was almost through the first season, and Raven still doesn't know who she is, and all that. I didn't mind that pacing. Now that I'm into season 2, kind of halfway, it's starting to feel like it's going to start to get to I don't know, the normal pacing, and I this is probably what other people like. I kind of liked the other one, but we're different that way. Like when we were watching Star Trek Picard, I don't know if you guys have seen any of that.
I did the first season. I binged it.
And the thing is my wife and I loved the first season a lot, and then we watched the second season and really almost stopped watching. It was almost like we're not going to watch it anymore.
That's what I heard. That's why I haven't done the second season yet.
Yeah, and then the third season, a lot of people really loved. I definitely like the third season more than the second season, but the third season really gives all the next generation next generation fans. It gives them all the touchy feelies. But what I loved about the first season that it wasn't just the next generation. It was kind of funky mystery, sci-fi noir thing going on that I really, really dug. So for me, the first season was my favorite. But for a lot of people who really just want to see an extension of Star Trek Next Generation, they were like, but
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Now, I have another Black Lightning question that
Yeah.
I've been wondering. In the pilot, when they show like the flashback stuff, was that you in that first costume doing the flashback scenes? Like when, like really quick, because I remember that, you know,
in the classic costume. I was gonna say, my question was gonna be like, did you only get to wear like the classic costume like a few times?
yeah, it was. It's interesting because we did and I'm trying to remember what ended up being in there. We definitely did. I wore the classic costume and did a whole bunch of stuff in the classic costume. And I'm not sure I forgot what ended up in there, but
it's
like,
just some quick shots of like security cam footage. It's just stuff like
yeah.
that.
So that we actually shot a lot more in the classic costume. There was a whole fight sequence in the school in the classic costume because so when we shot the pilot, when we shot the first episode, we actually, before the show got picked up, we shot what they call a teaser, which, so it was like, it wasn't the whole pilot, but it was like just almost like a trailer of the show. And so in that we shot all this regular stuff, and then like literally the last day, because like my character had, you know, we decided in the classic suit he was bald, so we shot all this stuff, and then on the very last day they completely shaved my head, and then we got into the classic suit, and then we shot the stuff in the classic suit. But then when the show got picked up, then we went back and shot all the extra scenes to make one full episode. So I did do some stuff in that classic suit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we're hitting our 1 hour mark.
I was gonna say, I just got one last question. DC, you're a big DC fan. Your DC, you know, legacy. Just wondering if you if you had anything that you were looking forward to, or something that you might want to do in DC, like a character or voice acting. If you have any projects coming up.
Well, I mean, like any other fan, I'm looking forward to the film, The Flash. It looks really cool. And I've kind of been, you know, now that HBO Max has become Max, we used to call it Hobo Max, and now we still now we just call it Hobo. I'm like, I'm not going to give you the Max, I'm just call it Hobo. And recently I've been going back and watching some of the, like I watched because I had never seen the director's cut of Batman v Superman.
Oh,
so
nice.
I wanted to watch the director's cut of that, which I just finished like last week, and then because I was starting to rewatch the director's cut of Justice League, and then I was like, no, I want to go back and watch the director's cut of Batman v Superman, and so I watched that, and it really got me excited again. I check out all DC animation.
This is why we like this guy. This is why.
Right.
Oh yeah, I mean that's because I was this guy before Black Lightning. Like this is who I am, you know. So it was just kind of perfect. And I love what I love about DC when it's done really well. First of all, DC animation is, for the most part, is better than unfortunately DC film. Like I was just talking to some friends literally last night as we were talking about Black Adam. And no disrespect to anybody, but that's not a very good film. And I was talking about a friend of mine who, she watched the movie Black Adam and didn't like it, but she didn't really know the story of Fate. I'm like, I was really unfortunate because I'm like, that's a great hero who could have his own movie and should have his own movie. And I was kind of telling her about, no, the thing is, the helmet is like it's like, it almost like possesses a person, and and once you have that helmet, like it's not letting you go. And when I was telling her the story, she's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, it should be its own film. And then we were talking about, DC, and I'm like, you know what? DC can't be Marvel, and it shouldn't try to be Marvel. What it should try to do is, and I think when DC works at its best, is when it's dark and when it's rooted in humanity. Like, where when we see, not just great powers, but the repercussions of those powers from a human level, because that's what DC can do really well that Marvel doesn't do really well. And so, but I'm excited about the Flash. And God, I don't know. I feel like there's so many things I would love to do, but I feel like it's a young man's game, and I feel like they've all passed me by. I don't know.
I mean, that was always one thing that I appreciate about when you did do Black Adam, was the idea of the older superhero who's,
right.
In a way, I had done that, but now I'm coming back to it, and I'm a father, and that was always one thing that I loved. Oh, there's Laura.
Hi. Say hi.
But Mr. Williams, we thank you for your time today.
No
we know it was a rough start. We appreciate you coming back and chatting with us.
I probably dominated some time, so I just wanted to also say, is there any questions that you were like dying to ask that you're like, oh, I know that we're out of time, but if there's any questions that you were dying to ask, I have no problems answering them.
No, my notes here I just referenced was I was really excited because we both watched your latest film.
Yeah,
and
I just finished it today.
We wanted to hit on that, and that
Fresh.
was like part of like the discussion piece because I didn't get to talk to you about it last time.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I wanted to stay and then throw in a little Black Lightning questions that I had from last time. So
awesome. It was a pleasure, guys. And hopefully, the strike ends and I have some new things for us to chat about later because I love talking to you guys.
Hey, thank you. We appreciate that.
I look forward to anything you've got coming up.
Check out Cress's film. Luckily, it is on Amazon Prime. So if you are a Prime subscriber, it's called What Remains. Check it out. It's worth your time. Great discussion points and just, being able to put yourself in those characters' positions.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
You're welcome. Thank you for being part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Today. No problem. Appreciate you guys.
Look up in the sky.
We just want to say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network. $1 a month, you'll get extra special content that you don't get on the main show, like movie commentaries and whatever else comes out of our mouths. So check it out, patreon.com/Krypton.
Before we start this episode of Krypton Report, I want to take a moment and just give a shout out here to our Patreon. I know what you're thinking. Gosh, everyone's asking for money, and I get it. But our Patreon is only $1. $1 a month. It helps us keep the podcast going. And what we do is we try to find interesting shows and topics and whatever we want to talk about. We've done, as of this little thing, our last recordings were on the Scream series. Brian and Tyler, that's me, do our own show where we record in the car, and it's kind of funny. And we talk about pop culture or whatever is going on. We also have the Supernatural podcast we've been reworking. It's taken on some time just because of life. But we do movie commentaries as well. It's something that James and I have done, what we used to do on the main show that we've started doing here. So for $1 a month on our Patreon, you can get those shows. There's at least 4 a month. Also, there's my movie pitch show that I do. But also, what we want is if you're a Patreon, you can come on. You can come on the main show if you want. Or if there's something you want to come on and talk about, we can do it as a Patreon special. So all I want is for $1 a month, think about chipping in, joining our Patreon, and you have a voice to be a part of things. Follow the link in the link tree or in the show notes below, patreon.com/Krypton Report.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough super talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, The Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/Krypton Report. You find all of our report.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.